History of the Hymns on the Mormon Channel is brought to you by The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Merrill Jensen's setting of Deseret, or the tune to which we sing High on the Mountaintop, underscores our first segment. High on the mountain top, a banner is unfurled. Ye nations, now look up. It waves to all the world. As the first glorious events of restoration unfolded in the sacred grove, events that would one day establish the banner of Israel in the tops of the mountains, Joel H. Johnson was seeking a religion that would answer his questions and provide the power he could not find in any of the churches he had seen. He wrote of those days in his journal, which eventually grew into a powerful and enlightening autobiography.
I was so carefully instructed by a pious mother that I dared not do anything that would displease the Lord or my parents. As soon as I could read, she gave me a small New Testament, which I carried in my pocket. I neglected few opportunities of studying it, and often committed some of it to memory. My attention was early drawn to the ancient ordinances and blessings of the Church. I believed, as far as my limited comprehension allowed, in baptism for the remission of sins, in laying on of hands for the gift of the Holy Ghost, and in signs following the believer, as mentioned in Mark chapter 16, verses 17 and 18. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. I believed that the order established by Jesus and his apostles in the primitive church was the only true one. I sought among the sects for it, but found it not.
Joel Johnson was born in Grafton in south central Massachusetts, March 23, 1802. When he was yet a small child, his parents migrated to Vermont. As a young man, he went to Pomfret, New York, where he lived until he was 21. In November 1826, he married Anna P. Johnson. He was an enterprising young man and invented a shingle cutter, which was widely used in the United States. In 1830, he went to Ohio. There, he met the elders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, read the Book of Mormon, and was baptized on June 1st, ordained an elder, and was soon called to preside over the Amherst branch of 100 saints. Joel did not meet the prophet Joseph Smith until 1831, but from that time on, he became his devoted follower. Michael Dowdle has done 2 settings of High on the Mountaintop. His first serves as our next underscore. From the very beginning and throughout his life, Brother Johnson was sent to proclaim the glad tidings, to hold aloft the banner of truth. In 1832, he was called on a mission to New York. In 1835, to Ohio and parts of the South. He preached in all the towns which surrounded Kirtland and baptized many. He organized a branch of 40 members in Springfield, Illinois, and was the first elder to preach in Carthage. Unable, of course, to see into the future infamy and horror of that place. Brother Johnson's missions after arriving in Utah took on a different nature, but he was, as ever, faithful and obedient.
After being baptized in 1831, I never lived but a short time in any one place on account of mob violence. And since I have been in Utah, I have made 11 new places. was never called on a mission without responding to the call, and was never asked to speak in public on the principles of religion when I excused myself.
With poetic power and spiritual conviction, Joel Johnson raised his voice in a hymn text that without excuse declared the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir sings High on the Mountain Top. Mark Small and Robert Torres's Mountains Medley underscores our continued story. Joel Johnson labored on the house of the Lord in Kirtland, where he owned a sawmill and provided lumber for the temple, working also to complete the temple at Nauvoo, where he received his endowment in May 1846. His family was literally driven from their home by a large mob of 100 men, and forced to leave several $1,000s worth of property in their hands. When he arrived in the Salt Lake Valley, Brother Johnson was made bishop and also a justice of the peace. He was active in the organization of a government for the state of Deseret in 1849 and elected a member of the House of Representatives. But by the following year, he was selected to assist in forming a settlement at the Little Salt Lake Valley, later to be named Parowan by President Brigham Young. In the settlements Joel Johnson helped to establish and strengthen as centers in Zion, he often served in civic offices, as well as callings within the church. Ebenezer Beasley, who wrote the music for High on the Mountaintop, was born in Bicester, Oxfordshire, England, on December 14, 1840, 10 years after the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was organized. Ebenezer demonstrated unusual musical talent at a very young age, and his interest in music was enhanced by the fact that the Wesleyan choir met in his parents' home. When he was only 6 years old, several women of influence tried to convince his mother to let them train him as a choir boy at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. But even as they refused, their lives veered down another path. They met the Mormon missionaries and joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in September of 1849, immigrating to Utah 10 years later. After a brief stay in Tooele, Ebenezer Beasley moved to Salt Lake, and his destiny in the kingdom began to unfold. He led singing in the Sunday school of the 19th Ward and began to revise and prepare music for the juvenile instructor, also composing music and compiling songbooks for Sunday schools and the Mutual Improvement Association. He studied violin under George Careless, who became conductor of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and was a member of Brother Careless's Salt Lake Theater Orchestra, directing it upon occasion when the conductor was absent. Beasley was also one of the men appointed by John Taylor to direct the publication of the Latter-day Saints Psalmody, which was the first LDS hymn book to include music as well as words. In August of 1880, when he was not yet 40 years old, Ebenezer Beasley was called to conduct the Tabernacle Choir. He was a gentle, kindly soul, but his intelligence was quick and precise, and his determination to excel and to lift others was unshakable and sure. He focused on the stewardship that had been handed him more than the honor. One of the problems he faced was a woeful lack of sheet music, for at this time, each copy had to be tediously written out by hand. He inherited a choir library of 182 hymns, and he worked tirelessly to obtain and compile more, entreating the aid of missionaries in England and Europe to purchase music for him and bring it home. Beasley realized that much was also lacking in the performance standards of the choir, and turned his attentions to this challenge as well. After the General Conference of 1884, he observed,
"The choir kept well in tune in every piece, but lacked in execution in some pieces. The latter point, of course, is due to the incapability of some of the members of the choir who, though they have been recommended by other members, are not up to the standard of proficiency that they should be. This defect I shall endeavor to rectify by testing the voice and capability of each new applicant for membership hereafter."
Kay Hicks Ward and Meredith Campbell performed their Mountains of the Lord medley now as our underscore. Ebenezer Beasley divided the choir into 8 vocal parts: first and second, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Harmony and the quality of sound was uppermost in his mind, and he knew that discipline of the spirit was necessary for both. From the minutes of the choir, dated 4th of November 1881, comes this insight.
At this practice, it was carried by motion that in the future, those members absenting themselves 4 practices of the choir without sending a sufficient excuse would have their names stricken from the roll, and that to rejoin they must be re-presented for membership.
Ebenezer Beasley became a strong force for good in the music of the kingdom, raising standards and laying a sure foundation upon which others might build. Just how did High on the Mountaintop come into being? There is a story behind the writing of the hymn, as told by Joel Johnson's wife Margaret to her grandson Bernard A. Johnson.
Joel H. Johnson operated a sawmill in Mill Creek Canyon as part of a church calling, wherein he cut lumber and delivered it to the tithing office, collecting not wages, but food and necessary supplies for his family from the church storehouse. In the spring of 1850, he headed into the lot of the tithing office with his load of choice lumber, but there were several other wagons ahead of his. He stopped his team, unhitched his horses, and turned them into Brother Brigham's pasture for the wait. The day was warm. Joel leaned against the shady side of his wagon, and his creative thoughts began to churn. He glanced up at Ensign Peak, rounded and clear against the blue sky. He thought of the significance drawn from the scripture in Isaiah. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. He will lift up an ensign to the nations. He lifteth up an ensign on the mountains. Joel knew of the vision Brigham Young had while still in Nauvoo, explained in the words of George A. Smith, of Joseph Smith, who showed him the mountain we now call Ensign Peak. And there was a flag or an ensign upon it. And Joseph said, Build under the point where the colors fall, and you will prosper and have peace. And Brother Brigham took the counsel and laid out Temple Square and the city of Salt Lake, due south of the peak.
The saints had arrived in the valley on a Saturday, July 24th, 1847, and spent the next day, the Sabbath, in rest and thanksgiving. But on July 26th, Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, Willard Richards, Wilford Woodruff, George A. Smith, Ezra T. Benson, Albert Carrington, and William Clayton had climbed the rugged peak and dedicated it as a sacred place unto the Lord. As Brother Johnson pondered, the words began to come.
High on the mountain top, a banner is unfurled. Ye nations, now look up. It waves to all the world. In Deseret's sweet, peaceful land, on Zion's mount, behold it stand. For God remembers still his promise made of old, that he on Zion's hill truth's standard would unfold. Her light should there attract the gaze of all the world in latter days. His house shall there be reared, his glory to display, and people shall be heard in distant lands to say, We'll now go up and serve the Lord, obey his truth and learn his word. For there we shall be taught the law that will go forth, with truth and wisdom fraught, to govern all the earth. Forever there his ways we'll tread, and save ourselves with all our dead.
Bethany Singleton and Nicole Neely performed their harp duet arrangement of High on the Mountain Top as our underscore. In the original version of the hymn, there were 2 additional verses. These were printed at the bottom of the page in the 1950 hymnal, but not retained for our current book. Then hail to Deseret, a refuge for the good, and safety for the great, if they but understood that God with plagues will shake the world, till all its thrones shall down be hurled. In Deseret doth truth rear up its royal head, though nations may oppose, still wider it shall spread. Yes, truth and justice, love and grace, in Deseret find ample place. These verses refer to Deseret, which was the original name given to the territory by Brigham Young. This was the Jaredite name for honeybee. The bee itself is an ancient and oft-times sacred symbol, and the imagery of the bee and the hive, of unity and cooperation, was also applied by Brigham to unite the saints and purify their efforts. It is interesting that when the Mormon people applied for statehood under the name of Deseret, they were rejected, but later accepted under the name of Utah, which is a corruption of the word Eutah, the name of an Indian tribe that lived in these valleys and mountains long ago. They maintained that their forefathers assigned this name to the land, the word Eutah, which meant high up, in the tops of the mountains. Thus, the name at last assigned to the land of the saints was part of the fulfillment of prophecy, substantiating the literal and symbolic promise of the house of the Lord being established in the tops of the mountains. An essential element of a hymn, of a great anthem that will survive the tests of change and time, is a powerful unity of music and words, beauty and strength in each, but in a way that blends them so naturally and appealingly that they move forward with one breath, one expression, one heart. The contour of the melody, with its energetic leaps and ascending lines, matches the majesty and vigor of the lyric, qualifying this as a truly great hymn. The tune name for High on the Mountaintop is Deseret, and all that was hope and beauty, all that was gratitude and faith, shines through the notes as the words unite with them. The eyes of the soul are lifted upward, and from deep within the singer comes the confirming cry, "Her light shall there attract the gaze of all the world in latter days." And the confirming commitment, "Forever there his ways will tread." The Mormon Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square perform Mac Wilberg's arrangement of High on the Mountain Top. And here is Michael Dowdall's second setting of High on the Mountain Top. Ebenezer Beasley wrote the melodies for 10 other hymns in the LDS hymnal in addition to this one, including Sing We Now at Parting, Let Us Oft Speak Kind Words to Each Other, Welcome, Welcome, Sabbath Morning, and 'Tis Sweet to Sing the Matchless Love. Joel H. Johnson wrote a prodigious amount of spiritual verse and poetry, and of actual hymn texts. In his own words, on May 21st, 1879, at the age of 77, he wrote,
My testimony for the last 48 years has been and still is that I know that God lives, for I have felt his hand and heard his voice, and I know also that the dispensation or fullness of the gospel brought forth through Joseph Smith is God's handiwork, for his voice has declared it unto me. This is my living or dying testimony to every human being upon the face of the whole earth. Even so, Amen.
Ebenezer Beasley composed, arranged, and refined much original music, and much that was given to him to direct, filter, and distill. He sought always for the highest within himself and within others, and all that he did in the spirit of love. At his funeral in 1906, the following exceptional tribute was paid him by Augustus W. Carlson, a longtime associate and friend.
Ebenezer Beasley was a man of evenness of temper and of the utmost kindness of heart. His soul was filled with harmony, which not only found expression in the music he produced, but it was manifest in everything that he did.
Larry Bastian conducts the festival brass in his arrangement of High on the Mountain Top. History of the Hymns is a program of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.